Simon, I've just jumped into my school here, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to build your custom scope and sequence. So we have the Stile library, and in the Stile library, we have our suggested scope and sequence across years 7, 8, 9, and 10. And a couple of things that teachers will notice looking into is, yes, we have the names of our units.
Yep.
We are now completely aligned to the New South Wales new syllabus. So everything says aligned, which is great. And then if you're looking for the names of the focus areas, you'll see these tags down the bottom, which is quite helpful.
Yes.
And we've had a bit of a look at this before and started to think about how could we Dr. Simon Crookify this. All right, so we've just copied across the Stile scope and sequence, and we've decided that we're going to edit this.
Yes, please.
So I'm going to hit Start Editing. And what we'll see is that we can pull across edits from the Stile library or our own library. So let's start with Year 7. What are we going to do here, Simon?
Okay, what I want to do is with your Introduction to Science, need a bit more time for that for my ideal, but I would like to create another instance of your Introduction to Science because I actually want to start with Practice of Science first and then do Nature of Science second. So perhaps 2 weeks of Practice of Science followed by 2 weeks of Nature of Science. We'll move our place and space to the right, and we'll move magnetism in somewhere else in a moment.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we decided to split up Introduction to Science into Practice and Nature of Science. So I'm just going to remove that unit for now because what we've gone and done is I'm just going to pull across to a separate screen. In our own subject, what we've done is we've copied these units across, and what we've done is we've decided which of those lessons we're going to include as part of Practice of Science.
Yes.
And then which of those we're going to include as Nature of Science.
Right.
So we kind of had a look at that ahead of time. And then what I went and did is I shared that to my school library, which is why we have this little shared tag.
Okay.
So now that I'm back in my scope and sequence builder, I can go to my own library and we'll see that I've got those introductions of science there. So I'm going to pull those across. This is our Practice of Science one. And then we've got our Nature of Science one. Now, you didn't want them to take up 6 weeks.
No.
How long would you like them to take up
Let's
each?
dial back the Nature of Science to 2 weeks, and in theory that could even become 1 week at points, but I think
So
that's fine there.
4 weeks total, is that what you're wanting?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Then we've got our place in space.
Yeah. And we got, that's fine.
Yep.
There, and then we got to get magnetism in. So what I would like to do is I would like to move the mixtures, states of matter, and depth study as they are now into term 2.
I'm just going to create like a little test. I'm going to call it test, but really it's just so I can dump forces down there for now.
Okay.
Because you said we want to actually put mixtures, states of matter, and this
Depth
opportunity for depth study. We're moving that into term 2. So that's just a reorder.
And, honestly, that's not a hard and fast thing, but it's that idea the students, having done particularly the practice of science, getting them into, mixtures early doors. I know a lot of people want to do that, and I think it's good to show, obviously, the flexibility.
Yeah,
with
they
the
love
Stile
chemistry,
platform.
don't they, coming
that's
in?
Right. So if we could move the classification, biodiversity, and cells down to term 4.
Okay, easy.
If we can move forces up to term 3, but reduce that to 7 weeks.
Yep, we can
And
do.
stick magnetism on the end.
There we go. And then pop magnetism
I'll
in
just
there.
make forces
hang on.
1 week longer, yeah.
I made that a little bit too short there,
that's
didn't
okay.
I?
Perfect.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, that would be, I guess, my kind of ideal.
So this is your ideal. So to summarize like some of our main changes, we just decided to split Introduction of Science up into the Practice of Science and the Nature of Science. And so what we did is we just created a duplicate of that unit in our own subject and shared that back to the library so that we could add it in here from our own library.
And that could even be a 3-to-1 ratio as well. So
yeah, we could.
In the favour of the more fun practice of science.
Yeah, so we could actually bring that down to 1 week, which would give you a little bit more time here for our place and space.
Or have 3 weeks for the practice of science.
Or do it the other way around, like that. And then from there, we've just taken what we did have in term 4 and we've brought that up to term 2 in the same order.
Yep.
And then we've moved forces to term 3 and popped magnetism on at the end, shortened that slightly.
And just on that, in the original draft, that focus area is called forces and magnetism. And my feedback was magnetism is a force. So it's a bit of tautology. And so sure enough, they reduced it to forces. And then magnetism is a content group.
Yep.
So.
And then we're sort of finishing off with our sales and classification
Beautiful.
At the end. And that's good to go.
Lovely.
So that's year 7. Let's take a quick look at year 8 now. Any changes you would make here?
So there's no changes I would make here, but I think what's really interesting to look at this is because we've got data science integrated throughout the different aspects of change, that we're essentially getting a hybrid term 3 and 4 of change and data science, which I think is more authentic. And that's definitely, one of the great ways that you could integrate data science. If you wanted to do a more hybrid data science integration, then there'd be ways to do it in other ones, but I think that looks great.
And you'll see by the number of weeks, you are getting at least, if not more, than a term's worth of data science there.
Yeah, that's great. So we're compliant.
Yep, perfect. All right, happy days with year 8. Let's have a quick look at year 9. This is another one that has that little extra bit or extra week here of a depth study. But again, there's depth studies.
But that's within context for the energy. Yep. Yeah, look, year 9 looks great. I mean, you could change it around if you wanted to for whatever local reasons. But that looks fine.
Beautiful. And then lucky last, we've got year 10.
Coming into this, not knowing what the style, scope and sequence looked like, I was going to recommend something like how you have terms 3 and 4, where personally I think waves and motion requires more than a term as it's currently presented. And so great minds think alike. You have already done that of your own accord, and that would have been my recommendation. And obviously we can do that if we integrate data science too, which you guys have done also.
Yeah, we've done that.
And look, if people felt, and I wouldn't be surprised, that with the genetics having data science 2 integrated in, that would take more than a term. I'm sure you could reduce the chemical reactions and the waves of motion to be slightly shorter all up. It all takes 4 terms to achieve all of that content.
Yep.
So it is great that you can adjust things for your local needs. But
it's worth noting that we've done this to a 9-week term, but that doesn't necessarily reflect the length of a term for every school. But it hopefully does account for some of the interruptions that teachers will face.
That's right. And I'm assuming that you can, if you change, say, the length of term 2, that doesn't affect term 1.
No, because I can make that longer if I need to.
Yeah, that's the usual thing where maybe term 2 or term 4 is shorter, or term 1 is often, let's say, an 11-week term, things like that. So, that's great that you can do that. That really helps.
Yeah, you can shift that around as need be.
Yeah, and just one more thing on year 10. I do know that some people want to move the waves and motion earlier to expose students to that level of physics before they make their subject selections.
Yeah.
So if you want to bring that to, I guess, term 1, term 2, you could do if you wanted to.
It sounds like we're pretty done with this now.
Yeah.
So if I click finish, then as a head of department, this is just sitting finished in my school library.
Yep.
But then if I wanted the rest of the teachers in my department to see it, I can hit publish.
Great.
And once I do that, they can go to the school library and see the exact scope and sequence that we've built. And then they can teach from that.
Fantastic.
There we go.
And I guess also with that, where schools have exam blocks, if they, again, need to shorten things to 8 weeks or 7 weeks or put an exam block in the middle, you can do that. Yeah.
You can,
Happy days.
You could even create your own little subject. This is exams, so you can see it in there.
Yeah, I think people would appreciate that.